Hello and welcome to The Positive Shift, a podcast hosted by Simcoe Addiction and Mental Health, where we focus on shifting perspectives on the journey of mental health and addiction recovery. Our goal is to create a safe and supportive space for those who are struggling and to provide guidance, hope, and encouragement. We understand that the road to recovery and self-improvement can be a challenging one. However, it's not something you have to do alone. Whether you are someone who is dealing with mental health and/or addiction, we believe that every story has value and can help others feel seen and heard. Our goal with this podcast is to bring together experts and real-life experiences to provide practical and meaningful insights into the process of healing. We want you to know that you are not defined by your struggles and that there is always a way to move forward. We are here to listen, to support, and to offer a shoulder to lean on as you take the important steps towards a better, more fulfilling life. So let's get started and take this journey together. Before we begin, the content discussed in this episode could be sensitive to our listeners. If you are currently in crisis, please contact Canada's Suicide Prevention Service at 1-833-456-4566 or dial 911. If you are in need of more information, please head over to our website, simcoerehab.ca, and go to our Resources tab to access downloadable PDFs, contacts, and guides. If you're looking for support and wish to seek treatment, you can email us at info@simcoerehab.ca or call today at 1-833-304-8181.
I have a very special episode today with a very special guest. Today's topic is first responders, which is a very important topic to discuss. And we have a very special guest. I want to welcome everyone and welcome Toby.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm introduction. Pleasure to be here today.
Excellent. So this podcast, the primary focus is going to be talking about some of the barriers and some of the ways we can reach out to the first responder community. Certainly a community that I feel is underrepresented in terms of the services that could be provided to them. And certainly one of the biggest barriers in the field right now, I think, is the lack of input from first responders to actually talk with them and ask them what services they really need. So part of the podcast focus today is to actually spread some awareness and open up some discussion and actually talk to first responders about what it is they need, what they feel are some of the major barriers in terms of healing and getting better. So again, Toby, it's an absolute honor to have you here. And I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me.
Well, talk. It's, as Ray said, it's a hugely important topic that has not been touched upon or is starting to be touched upon within the world of mental health and within the different faculties of first responders. And it's dear to my heart as I've had many struggles within mental health and addiction. And it's just I think it's time to bring that to the forefront of people's minds and bring it to attention that we are humans behind the badge that we wear.
Definitely. And then I know if you don't mind, one of the conversations we had before was it's crucial for first responders while on active duty or doing whatever they may be doing to be able to keep their emotions and feelings in check, right? Can you explain to me the significance of doing that and why that's important?
Absolutely. In my experience is that if you have a job to do, and that the jobs that we do as first responders across board are demanding emotionally, physically, and at times you are going to experience and have to do things that nobody should be able to ask of another human being. Now, having said that, when that time you are called upon and asked to do that, You have to put your emotions to one side. You have to do the job that's in hand and be able to facilitate whatever needs to be done at that present time. Now, the problem with masking it and not showing that emotion is the repercussions after of not fully, in my experiences, is not understanding what that emotion was at the time and putting that, almost trying to put that to bed without unraveling it first.
So what you're saying is the emotion doesn't really go away. It just kind of temporarily gets delayed. Like what happens? So you're trained to do this. You're trained to do the job. Clearly there's going to be emotions like anything else. What ends up happening?
The emotions are buried. The system that you're in and that industry, you are taught not to show the emotion because of, and the way that I see it is you're ineffective if you're showing that emotion. If you are seen to have any emotion, negative emotion towards your job, you are less effective in other people's eyes. You're not able to carry through that task because you're taking it personally.
Okay, and I think, and I missed this, and I think this is very important. Do you mind sharing in terms of what it is you did as a first responder?
Yeah, for our next UK military personnel served overseas, and that has caused me to have some PTSD from there, and then substance abuse to help with that, or at the time thinking I'm helping myself with that.
Right. And thank you. I appreciate you sharing this. And you know, it did just from somebody who clearly doesn't know that life or that particular expectation. I mean, I noticed when you were speaking, it was a lot about being task oriented and simply that is it, which is clearly not very much a human characteristic, right? How does that, or how have you felt that is translated into your life now? Like, I mean, clearly it's probably being a first responder is one of those jobs where it's probably the only job that really asks you and tells you basically that you need to put your feelings aside for the betterment of what's happening in front of you. How do you think that's impacted you moving forward?
The way that you're trained in the job that I did is you're trained and you are conditioned to not have that emotion attached. Mm-hmm. So you're not becoming robotic, but you're trained to be indifferent about very hard situations. That then coming into civilian life, I've had a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding about my own emotions and others. It's caused barriers between myself being able to get close to people, being willing to be close to people, as I'm discovering through fear of hurting myself emotionally. But it's the translation coming into the real world, civilian world, but, from a military background has been hard. It's been a very hard transition. And I'm only recently unraveling why that's been so difficult.
Okay. Do you attribute the transition into the civilian world as still holding that belief that you need to hold your emotions?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, up until very recently.
Okay.
It was a strong belief of mine that I had to still uphold this pretense of who I was before in that job. The job became part of me rather than me being able to separate myself from the job.
Okay. I want to kind of bring it back a little bit and back into the moment. I mean, clearly this is part of the training. It's the expectation that goes along with it. If you don't mind sharing, being in the moment. So, I mean, yes, emotions could be put on the shelf, but in the moment, when you're with those that are actively serving and you're going through the motions of everything that's happening, how in the moment would you deal with the emotions?
You will, or I didn't. There are specific things that we're trained to do to take your attention from the act of what you've just done. They're distraction techniques that are instilled in you. They are automatic responses through the body to check certain parts of the weapon that bring your attention directly away from what's just happened. We're very much goal orientated within what we're doing at the present time. So the goal is above anything else. What we're setting out on a mission to do overrides anything else or below that. So having that trained into you and having that one objective keeps your mind going towards that, rather than being able to sit and ponder and think about what actually the act is happening.
So now I'm going to push you back a little bit forward. So transitioning back into civilian life, because I think part of one of my reasons for really wanting to do this podcast is what I mentioned at the beginning of this video beginning of this podcast was I've worked in numerous facilities now, and it seems like there is increasing awareness to first responder and the need to help those that have sat in a first responder's position. And one of the things that I see in many different places is essentially people like myself that come along and basically say, I think this is what people are going to need in order for them to get better. And with the first responders I've worked with over the years, we very much lacked input from first responders to say specifically, this is what's going on in my life. So, for instance, I was sharing with you prior to the podcast that a lot of times clinicians or helpers out there go straight to PTSD and say, look, this is what's happening, and this is what we need to focus on. And when a lot of the first responders I have spoken to are talking about their day-to-day quality of life, whether it was specifically related to PTSD or simply an inability to adapt back to civilian life. As simple as something like sitting down with my kid to play and not having interest in that, or being with my significant other and really wanting to be there for them, but can't be for whatever the reason may be. So one of the things I really wanted to look at is what are we missing? So if you look at all the psychiatrists, doctors, just the psychotherapists, the treatment programs, all the places that are trying to open doors and say, you know what? We're here to help. What are some of the things that we're missing, or what are some of the things that you believe that the system, and I ask them to be free about this and speak freely. What is it we're missing, or what areas do we need to do better on in terms of giving back to this very, very important community of people?
The first thing that strikes my mind or comes to mind is the lack of resources whilst you're employed or serving. There's, as I said earlier, there's the belief that if you're showing emotion or if you're struggling in any aspect mentally, that you are not fit for the job. Now, we are more than the batch. We're more than the unit that we work for or the regiment. Although that is a brotherhood, we are more than that. We are humans, and we do have those feelings. We need to be able to process them at the time it's happening, or very, very soon after. Now, that's a systematic thing that is pushed down and very much swept under the carpet in my experience of not open. I wasn't able to openly speak up about it because of those preconceived conceptions. Had I tried to at the time, I firmly believe that they would have been swept under the carpet and ignored. And I don't think the systems were or are in place to cope with that at the level of the employer, whether that be government employer or private contractors. I think where we're missing as well is, or falling short, is a true lack of understanding in the field of the professionals that are trying to get us the help of first-hand accounts or first-hand lived experience, it's very hard to try and open up to somebody with having that at the same time having to explain what the job is about and explain what we've done. That, just in explaining it, is reliving that trauma. Right. And having to do that to then open up to someone is, in my experience, very, very difficult to do. You're having to put so much trust in that newfound relationship that it's nearly overwhelming, and it's just in that itself. But luckily, and he's going to shudder when I say this, luckily I found that in Ray. Yeah. And I have had that. I have had that relationship. I've been able to open up to him wholeheartedly. And if people are able to find that person, then it is life-changing.
And I can certainly verify that. And I know when we first started to speak, I could actually see how reserved you were. And it's almost like I could see you were trying to protect me from something. And this is why we're doing this, right? Like it's, and I really appreciate that lived experience part of it, because I think that's absolutely crucial. If you jump over to, say, for instance, the addiction side of things, many people will take power from addiction counselors or addiction psychotherapists that may have had lived experience as well, and be able to kind of understand it, not on a better level, but on a different level. Mm-hmm. And then this is why we tend to have first responders specific groups or programs, because of exactly what you just said. Part of the fear is vicariously traumatizing somebody simply from, hearing information, which is very much a real thing. With that said, though, it does not serve the individual any purpose if again, you can't share openly. So I do want to come back to something you said, because I actually absolutely think was brilliant, is if the help was provided well, actively, in service, do you think if that was the case, we would see less cases of trauma or PTSD coming home? Like, do you think if there was more mental health intervention in the process of doing it, and let's say for a second they did not sweep it under the rug, and they were able to correlate and understand, because clearly it is possible, if we're speaking realistically, to be able to detach emotions temporarily to serve a particular task. But do you think it is possible, or would it be beneficial to deal with it then? And do you think the results will be better in terms of people adapting to more civilian life?
Absolutely. I think it would help enormously stalling that. Reframing it. I don't think that you're going to stop the amount coming back. You're still going to have the effects of whatever you're seeing, but we can lessen the mental struggle of people. We can start to work on it faster, and get to the point of what we're feeling, rather than continuously masking it for months, years, decades after, until we then come to that boiling point that we need to reach out, because loved ones are seeing the effects. There's a lot more that personally I was hiding for years before my loved ones were seeing the effects of what I was carrying. I think if we can start to unravel that and open our minds up to what we've seen and what we've had to push down at the time, and get to that sooner and faster, then I think, we can lessen the effects of that mental struggle.
An interesting thing that comes up for me as well, I notice this has been in my experience primarily working with first responders, specifically with military personnel, is I certainly do see the carryover of the not sharing emotion. So even in therapeutic environments where kind of it is the goal or the objective to talk about emotions, there is this kind of silence that happens, right? What would you say to those that may still kind of be holding that belief of I need to suck up those feelings at all costs, be strong at all costs, and basically, side their own emotions? What is something you can recommend as somebody who is kind of going through the healing process and has made significant strides forward? what is something you can suggest to people that, for instance, may just be coming home from somewhere, maybe active duty or any other first responders that may be struggling with something, that are afraid of opening up because how it may actually impact not only their family, but even clinicians that they may be speaking to as well? What is some feedback that you can give to them about this process?
I think having felt, Ray's just summed me up. He's put me he's characterized everything there. Yeah. That's how I was feeling. It's very real. It's valid to yourself at that particular point. Where it isn't valid is it's not serving you long term. It is not going to help you win this fight. By shielding others and thinking that we're protecting others, we're only hurting ourselves. There are people in this industry, like Ray, that have the knowledge not to take this on as a burden on themselves. Us divulging, and myself being able to divulge some of the stuff that I've seen and been through, has been a huge weight lifted off of me. I've been able to understand that it doesn't need to be carried every day. It's always going to be there, but that load can lessen. The kind of overwhelming thought of coming into therapy and reaching out was huge, and I shied away from it for a long, long time. But now, having started the process and living kind of in recovery now, it's life-changing. It's phenomenal. You don't have to unload everything. You do not have to get into the nitty-gritties of it, but you can get into the emotions attached to it. And my emotional range used to be next to zero. And I thought that I was doing well through that. I knew anger really well. That was my friend. I knew happiness, but I knew nothing in between. Now I'm starting to live that. And every day is becoming lighter and brighter. And it's a joy to live. Yes, there are struggles still. But being able to open up and reach out is the hardest thing that you're going to have to do. But once you've got there, then the world's your oyster. All I can urge is that you speak to someone. It doesn't have to be a loved one. It can be someone in the mental health field that just lifting up that telephone or sending an email is the start of that process. It's a very hard and daunting thing to do, but just reach out if you can.
This is exactly why I wanted you on this podcast, right? The strength to open up and say that. And again, let's look at not only what you were taught, but let's also go before that to the belief that many of us have growing up, specifically as men, where at all costs you hold back your feelings. You hold back your feelings. And for you to not only kind of have that and then also be of service with that in your brain, and then to come out and get on a podcast with somebody and talk about this to many people out there that may be struggling, that may not come forward for the very reasons that we're talking about, is exactly why we're doing this. And I mean, there is the old model, like you're weak if you share your feelings. If you believe that, I would hope at some point you come and actually take a good look at Toby and tell him he's weak to his face, because he's as tough as you get. And he truly does personify what we're really trying to do here with first responders, specifically allowing them to know that they're no longer alone. And without a doubt, I think, and sorry, this is going to be a bit of a sensitive spot, but for me personally, I'm really tired of hearing specifically military personnel that have taken their life because they felt so alone and because nobody could understand, and on some levels they couldn't understand. And honestly, I'm really tired of hearing it, and it's almost becoming a little too normal. And I think the mental health field and just people in general need to step up a lot more. And I don't want to make this political in any way, shape, or form, but just simply about awareness. Remembrance Day in Canada and wearing a poppy, and rather than it just simply being a trendy thing to do, to really have some sort of actual understanding of what that means, and not only remembering those who bravely gave their lives, but also remember those who right now are fighting for their lives because of a lack of support, because of a lack of understanding. I think it's very important that a lot more awareness is given to this. And to have somebody like you, Toby, again, my gratitude is absolutely endless to have you come on the show and really be that voice that says, I have lived experience. I know this could work. Give it a shot. It goes much further than anything I can tell you. I can throw you statistics, studies, so on and so on, but it really doesn't mean anything unless it's coming from somebody who has truly lived that. And you're certainly breathing that now, right? So again, thank you very much for that. I think I got a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. You talked about kind of where you were versus where you are now, and then I think it'd be really cool to kind of end the podcast off with in what areas have your life improved? So you were very clear to talk about my time versus my civilian life. Walk me through kind of the benefits of, doing the work, talking about your feelings, expressing what you needed to express, and then where your life is right now. Kind of give the overall picture of what this could look like for somebody, if you don't mind.
The easy answer and the non-truthful answer would be everything's fantastic. It's not yet, but it's on that way. Going back a couple of months ago, my life was pretty much non-existent. I could turn up, I could work, I could come home, I could pretend I'm happy, I could pay lip service to anybody, but I was also paying lip service to myself. I was in a very, very dark place. I was not far with substance abuse, not far from killing myself. And I mean to the point of within a day or so. I was very, very, very lucky to have my wife who dragged me out of that and somehow made me see the light just before it would wait out. That's where I was going through the process of recovery, I still am in that process, but starting that process of recovery, as I said before, it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Being able to admit it to myself that I was an addict and that I needed help was extremely difficult to come to terms with. From holding myself before or having myself at a pedestal of always helping others and never accepting help, to actively asking for help was a very, very new and strange concept. But it's the best thing I could have done ever. Like I owe recovery, or I owe my life to my recovery now. It's more than what I am, and it's bigger than what I thought I could be. And that's in a relatively short period of time coming into these new feelings. My emotional range, as I was saying earlier, is now, I don't know, 100-fold of what it was. That has its pros and cons because the sat now has new rounds, but I'm able to reframe it and have some positives coming out of that. My day-to-day now is becoming brighter every day. I'm enjoying life. I have a purpose. I actually have a life. I'm living. It's exciting to wake up in the morning and have a day ahead of me. It's not a drag. It's not, I'm going to lay in bed for 3 days doing whatever substance to try and turn my brain off. It's now actively getting up, enjoying life, doing what I do day to day, but enjoying every aspect of it. Yes, there are challenges. My brain's my strongest and my worst enemy at the moment, the times, but it's being able to have the skill base from being in a rehabilitation center of learning where I can be, and the skill base that I've acquired allows me to understand the feelings and emotions that I'm going through. And that translating that into day-to-day life is phenomenal. It's I don't want to say it too many times, but it is life-changing. And it saved me.
Say it as many times as you want to say it. That's the entire message I to get out there. I want everyone to know, just before we wrap up, And again, I want to hear, so even if you're listening to this podcast and you are a first responder that's struggling, please get in contact with us here at Simcoe Addiction and Mental Health, and really reach out to us and let us see how we can help you. Even if you just need to call and talk, if that's where you are in this process, wonderful. But I think it's about time, and I'm certainly speaking to you, Toby, as well. You made a very honest statement that I'm always thinking of everyone else. And I think for all the first responders out there, military, police, paramedic, whatever it is you may be doing as a first responder, it's time somebody puts you first. The only way that can happen, however, though, is if you allow yourself to be put first. And I think that's the message that we want to end with today. Put yourself first. Allow us to give back to you. If you're struggling, please give us a call. There's help there, right? So again, Toby, thank you very much for joining. I said it before. Absolute honor. Again, not a word I use sparingly. Absolute honor to have you here. I've been looking forward to this. I originally had Prissy scheduled for this, and I'm very, very glad that I got to do this with you. And I hope you come back in the future if you like.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners. We look forward to putting on our next podcast. I believe it's on attachments with a special guest, and we'll surprise you then. But nevertheless, enjoy your evenings. Stay safe out there, and please reach out. Thank you.